one acknowledgement that many teachers, co-workers, bosses who are non-Muslims, they make is when we interact with Muslims, it's as though they have a higher standard of interactions. Their akhlaq, their character is very different. And the reason for this is very clear. In the hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam time and again stresses the importance of treating one another great. From our family, to those around us, to those we interact with, it's a given that ask your non-Muslim coworkers and they will often say that the Muslims that I interact with, they're unique, they're different, they're more kind, understanding, honest. And that's the ideal that we need to strive towards. And the reason for this, and the ulama explain, is our tradition, our deen, our way of life is something that emphasizes huquq, the rights that we owe to other people. For instance, we talk about the rights that we owe to our parents, the rights that we owe to our neighbors, the rights that we owe to the people that we do business with. These are all rights. But the ulama explain that this culture that we cultivate of rights and character can only be stable if our focus is how to fulfill the rights of other people and not to demand that our rights be fulfilled. There's a key distinction here. When we read the hadith, and in the hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is asked, Ayyul a'mal ahabbu ilallah, which deeds are the most beloved to Allah? And we learn that the rights of the parents. Or when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, Jibreel alayhi salam came and told me that I have to fulfill the rights of the neighbor, حَتَّى ظَنَنْتُ أَنَّهُ سَيُوَرِّثُنِي, to the point that I thought that he would be one of my heirs and take my inheritance. That's how much emphasis he gave on the rights of the neighbor. When we read and hear these ahadith, we don't read it so that we can demand from our neighbors that they fulfill my rights, or I can go to my children and demand that they fulfill my rights, or I go to my siblings and demand my rights. These are a given. When we cultivate an atmosphere of giving people their rights, the opposite will happen and people will give their rights that are due to us immediately. And this is why the Muslim akhlaq, moral, ethical code is so powerful, is because we're taught how to fulfill rights before we demand rights. And I'm prefacing this with a conversation, inshallah, we're going to have over the next few days, and that is the rights of family members. That's the topic that we're going to be discussing. What are the rights that a child has from a father? What are the rights that a father has from the child, the mother from the daughter, daughter from the mother? All of these relationships in the Sharia, in the Quran and the Sunnah, we have clear guidelines on how to act. But before we discuss the ahadith and Quran regarding this, it is imperative that we bear in mind that any conversation about rights, any conversation about what people owe to others, my primary focus should be how I fulfill it to others before I demand that they fulfill it to me. And once we learn to fulfill the rights, Allah will make it such that others will start to fulfill my rights as well. Before I conclude, I want to mention, this is not to say that if somebody's doing oppression, dhulm, that I don't have a right to reciprocate. I don't have a right to seek out justice, that's for sure. But if we want an environment where everybody's considerate of one another, we start by giving people their rights, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it such that others will give my right back to me as well. And in the upcoming days, we will talk about what are the rights that I as a child, what rights do I have to give to my parents? What are the respect and love that I have to show to them? As a parent, how do I interact with my children? As a sibling, how do I interact with my brothers and sisters? When I'm with my extended family, what relationship does the Prophet ﷺ inculcate and advocate for? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instill within us the ethical code of Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us torchbearers of the akhlaq of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and fulfill the rights of one another. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.